Hello and welcome to the DATAcated Show. My name is Kate Strashne, founder of DATAcated, and I will be your host today. I'm really excited to bring you another episode of the show, and today we're going to talk about success in data careers. And with us, we have a special guest, Adam DeJans Jr. He is a data science manager at Toyota, but he also goes by many other titles, as you will soon hear. So, as you're joining us, let us know where you're tuning in from. This is a live show, so if you've got questions, if you've got comments, go ahead and put those into the chat on either LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter, or X, I guess you can call it. And we'll try to go through as many questions as we can, but we have some great questions lined up for Adam already. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring Adam up on our stage here. Adam, welcome to the DATAcated Show.
Hello, Kate. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to have you. I think somebody actually recommended you when I had a post about, hey, who should I interview on the DATAcated Show? I think it was Steve or someone else who's
Yeah,
like, hey,
Stephen
you should
Stark.
definitely have Adam. So here we are.
The prophecy came true.
Yes, exactly. So, Adam, for before we get into the topic, I always like to do a quick intro. So, in addition to sort of telling us what you're working on now, and maybe talk about some of your various titles that you had in the past year and a half, like we talked about, also walk through a day in the life, right? What does a typical day in the life look like for you?
Right. So I'll start with my background. So my background, I formally studied mathematics at the bachelor's and master's level with the intention of going further than that. And I decided to stop because I wanted why the whole point of studying was to get a job for me. So as soon as I had a job offer, I went with that. I started in operations research at Ford Motor Company, spent some years there, did AI consulting for a bit. That's where I got into more of the deep learning, like large scale machine learning projects. And right now I work at Toyota, mostly in supply chain as a decision scientist, data scientist, or whatever they want to call me. So, so essentially, my job function is to be basically a data scientist that works in supply chain. I supervise various projects as far as the data science implement the scope, the design, the implementation, managing our vendors, working with the business partners. So a lot of my role right now is working essentially coming up with the scope. So what's the bit like working with the business? What is the business problem we're trying to solve for? What does success look like for the business? And then crafting a team of data scientists, data engineers, IT folks, and actually getting that implementation all the way through, not just the model, but all the way through to production. So I see it end to end, from
Sounds
conception to production.
sounds simple enough, Adam. I guess you do keep busy. And in terms of your day, are you working remotely or do you come into
Yeah,
the
so
office?
I am working remotely at the moment. I technically I work in I live in Metro Detroit, Michigan, but I work for the headquarters in Plano, Texas, and I travel there about 1 week every 2 months, I would
Oh,
say.
nice.
So I
That's
still get to see the people I work with, but it's not a forced requirement
that's
yet.
really nice. Especially these days I'm hearing that companies not only want you back in the office like 3 or 4 days, a lot of them are pushing for
Yeah, they
5 days, just like they used to.
Yeah, that is happening with other groups. So I think that when you're in IT, they give you a little more
That's
free.
true.
Yeah, you get a little more freedom. I know the business group is set to come in 3 days a week, starting I think in another month or so.
Yeah,
So we'll
it's
see how
definitely
that.
happening.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
So when I was looking into you, like doing some research, I came across something called Bit Bros. Sounds cool.
That's
Tell us
right.
more. What's Bit Bros?
Yeah, so Bit Bros, I started with John Elam, he's a product owner at Toyota. I met him at Toyota. And essentially, what we found was that there's a lot of information about how to get your, like, how do you get a data job? How do you get into data science? Like entry level, what skills do you need to know? How do you get in? But then once you get in, what do you do? It's kind of the what our
You
that's
do the work,
kind of
right? I
yeah,
mean,
that's
what do you?
Yeah, but then how do you actually get promoted? Like, what do you do? So that's the job. The title of the book's like, so you got the data job. Now what? Like, now what do you do? Because as it turns out that those skills that got you the job are not necessarily the skills to get you promoted, and
Hmm.
a lot of very technical people suffer from this, where they think, okay, if I'm the most technical person, I should be able to get promoted based off of solely merit, but that tends not to be the case.
It's not the case. Let's just say it first. It's not the case.
Yeah, that's not the case.
So you're saying what got you there, which is hired, is not going to get you here, which is
Right. It's
promoted.
it's like when you do an interview, right? Like the interview is something super technical, and then you show up and you're not doing anything close to what what was in the interview.
Yes, and so you mentioned you've got a book. You're working on a book now. You've got the data job. Now what? Right? Tell us more about the book.
Yeah, so the book is essentially it's meant to be a guide for people who, I'd say, it's relevant to everybody, but I'd say it's more targeting entry level or mid-career type of data folks. So it's not specific to data science or data
Okay.
engineering or anything. It works for everybody. And what we do is we just basically lay out a guide that helps you get promoted, like that, because that's the end goal. Either get promoted, get the job you want, get the
Hmm.
recognition that you deserve, how not to get passed up for promotions, how to promote your work, how to go through your first project. Like, what do you, because it turns out it's a lot more than just modeling to get it, especially to get it across the finish line. You need to have business understanding, you need to set metrics, you need to collaborate with other teams if you actually want it in production. And you do
Yeah.
want it in production, because a model sitting in a notebook is not really helping anybody.
Yeah. And so is the book out now, or when can people
So
actually get?
we just finished our first draft all the way through, but we need to review it. Of course, that's another
Is it
process.
going to
But
be an ebook or like a physical
I
copy?
think we're gonna do both. So we're
Mm.
looking into printing it as
Perfect.
well. So that should be released probably soon this year, definitely. I don't have an
Coming
exact.
soon.
Yeah, coming soon this year. You can find out more at bitbrosdata.com.
Yeah, there's a wait list or something, right? On BitBros.
A what?
A wait list for the book or
Oh,
something.
yeah, just like if you want to sign up and get information, we
Perfect.
just communicate that. So we also are looking at doing cohorts as well. So getting people together, like-minded individuals together who want to upskill and talk about data and talk about how to get promoted.
Mm.
We're working on possibly getting some people together and forming some type of community around that with people who are interested in taking that next step forward. So
Yeah,
we
it's
haven't.
super helpful if you've got like smaller accountability groups of like-minded individuals that are on the same journey and can share what the pitfalls or successes together, right, as they get to that next goal.
Right, and I think everybody has something to contribute. Sometimes
Yeah.
they don't know it, but that's part of the goal, is to get that out of them.
Okay, cool. Well, today we're talking about success in data careers, and you alluded to this, right? You said just modeling or, programming or coding is not going to get you to the next level. There are other maybe skill sets that people need to have or actions they need to take when they're in, let's assume people already have the job.
Hmm.
They read your book and they got the job. Now they want to either be recognized, get promoted, get to that next level, become a manager, become a higher level individual contributor, whatever it is that they're actually wanting to do. And let's say they already know their goal. So let's say the goal is to get promoted. What are some of those other skills that they need to consider, the non-technical skills?
Right. So first, the technical skills they are tools to enable you to get the job done, but the number one thing you need to do is actually show outcomes. So you're doing all this work, but so what? And when you say so what, why does the business care about this? So you can say, oh, I like maybe you made some big model improvement. Like I gained like 1% accuracy on this, and the business will look at you like, okay, I don't care. Like, what is the dollar impact? How does this help me? They're always thinking, how does this help me? And what you need to do is really talking in numbers and money to the business a lot of the times. But doing that, you need to build relationships with the business. So you need to be in constant communication with them. You know, what are we trying? Make sure that what they're asking for is really what they want is a big thing. Talking to them about the trade-offs, the risk, and being in constant communication with them, and translating your technical accomplishments into something that's tangible to the business. I'd say those are kind of the most important feats. And then also being able to promote yourself as well without looking like you're just bragging all the time.
Like you're full
So,
of it. Yeah. So
yeah, so that's something else that we discuss in the book as well. But a
that's
lot of that
definitely an
just
art.
stems from building these relationships and building them early. So, just a quick story. I once worked at a company, and in that company, they hired really brilliant data scientists. Like they went to like PhDs from MIT, Stanford, Georgia Tech, like all these big name universities, very educated, but they couldn't deliver the actual like they ended up with after a few months they just ended up with a bunch of PowerPoints, right? Because they wanted to do the most technical thing, they had to be perfect,
Yeah.
and they never got anything out. And since they didn't get anything out, the business just finds this as a waste of time. It's like, okay, we're not paying you to do research. We need to see improvements. If we don't see any outcomes, then we're gonna cut the project.
Then what's the point, right? Why are we doing
Right.
it if there's no
So
outcome?
so that I really like that example because like they're way smarter than I ever was, but they just don't. I guess they didn't have the business reasoning behind what
To
they
get
were
it to
doing.
get it
Yeah.
across that finish line, right?
Right.
Now, you mentioned talking money in the beginning. So, what is that actually? Do you have an example of what that would look like for a data scientist to? I'm assuming you meaning like ROI, like this is how much we can make, how much we can save. But do you have an example of when a data scientist would talk money and the business was like, "Yay, that was."
Yeah, I think it should be all the time. So I don't think the business should really be updated on really the technical details. Like for example, I'm working on an optimization project right now where we do supply allocation, and I implemented this feature. I use this really nifty way to model it. And if I'm talking to my like other people who are working on in the modeling, I might tell them about, oh, look how I did this. The business doesn't care how I did that. What they want to know is, okay, you implemented this feature, and what it does is essentially this feature did smoothing. So as you
Mhm.
as you manufacture vehicles, you don't want to build like 50 Prius, 500 Prius this month, then 50 the next month, then 1,000, and like go up and down. So it smooths it out. And all that I really need to tell them is, hey, it's going to be smoother. You're going to be able to you plan for this better. You're going to save, and then try to quantify it. Like
Right.
you're going to be able to save 20% in labor resources because it's going to be scheduled ahead of time with
That's probably all
consistency.
they're gonna hear. Save
And
20%.
yeah,
Thing. Okay, good.
something like that. That's something that really that's all that really matters. They don't really care. And the higher you go up in management, the less they care. Like they don't. All they want to know is it blocked? Like, is something blocking this from getting done? And when is it going to be done? And what's the outcome? Like, they don't care about anything else in between. That's for more senior managers. Your direct manager probably you can get away with a little more detail. But
Yeah, I feel like even listing out what the obstacles are is not enough, right? You need like, here's what's stopping me from getting there, and here's what we need to do. And
yeah,
then,
so yeah, you never want to bring a problem without a
yes.
solution. So if you bring a problem, you should have thought about the solution to it as well. Otherwise, why did we hire you is the thinking.
Yeah, exactly. So some of these soft skills, like knowing the business, right, that domain expertise or communication skills, presentation skills, a lot of times you can't really learn that from a textbook or an online course. So how do you suggest people, especially the beginners who don't have as much hands-on experience, like how can they practice some of these skills?
Yeah, so I think that to practice it, you just need to really I mean, there's nothing that can substitute experience. So you can read about different things, but then you want to try to implement them. So you might want to read something from some book and then try to implement it right away and see what works for you. And you're going to fail a lot. But the most important thing is to build relationships. So it's not even about understanding the business domain. That's a whole nother aspect. But building relationships with your business partners is vital in the data science space because you could have a not so perfect model, but if your business partner trusts you, that's probably the model that's going to go forward. So it's beyond even just having the business domain, although that is important as well.
I feel like we do say build relationships and have open lines of communication and speak their language. What is a like a concrete example of you building a relationship with a business owner, like in
Yeah,
your current role?
so like in one product I have, we suggest accessories to put onto vehicles, and we want to change maybe like you can suggest at the model level, so like an actual like model number. You can suggest at the grade level, like you might hear like LT, LE, all those different grades of a car, or the series level, which is like Prius, Highlander, like
Hmm.
very very high level. So and a good example of this is when we were talking about switching to the grade level. I wanted to, yeah, there might be some business reason behind it, but I need to go and talk to the product owner and tell him what are the risks involved with this. So even though it sounds counterintuitive, like I'm gonna go up to him and tell him all the problems that we might have with this, that actually builds some type of trust because they
Hmm.
know that you're looking out for them.
Okay.
So in that example, okay, we might go to grades, but we might get this negative side effect that's going to happen. And if you want to try to like counter that a little bit, this might be what you can do. So going up to them with risks and examples and making it very clear to them what the business outcomes are for these, I think that helps to build trust. So explaining the risk, even though some people might disagree and say you shouldn't tell them that. I prefer to over communicate with them as long as I'm communicating in a way that's speaking more toward their language, if you'll call it that.
I'm absolutely on your side with this one. Over communicate, be as transparent as possible, and that does build trust because you're showing them what could happen and sharing the risks. Let's shift over to new projects. Let's say starting tomorrow, Adam, you're placed on a brand new project, maybe even in a new company. What advice do you have for people in that position?
Yeah, so especially if you're in a new project with new people, I think that you should, if especially if you're at a new company,
Yeah,
you can create a 90-day plan. I'm sure people have heard of them.
yeah.
Maybe not though. A lot of people haven't actually. But basically it's a walk, like a crawl, walk, run type of deal. So the first 30 days, you're just there soaking up as much knowledge as you can, understand the business problem, like meet people, network with people, start to build relationships early. The next 30 days, you might want to start to look into some tasks, start thinking about solutioning, like see what there is to improve. And then the next 30 days, you can actually start working on implementation, making a name for yourself. But that's really detailed in the book that we have. But beyond that, I think that for the project itself, so that's coming new to any position. And then for the project itself, there's some things that you'd want to do. You'd want to talk to the business
Hmm.
first and see how do you define success for this project? So what does it mean for you for this project to be successful to you? Especially a product owner should be able to tell you that because nothing else really matters. If the product owner's happy, which means the business is happy, I mean that's the most important thing. And then helping them come up with metrics to figure out, okay, okay, you said what this means to you, but how do we measure that? So I
Hmm.
want to know really early on, how do I measure that? Because that goes into what data I pull, how I build my models, how I think about if my model's any good, what model should I go forward with, all of that as derived from understanding what is the final outcome supposed to be and how am I measuring it.
Hmm.
I think that's the very first step. So
So, a follow up question here. So, let's say you're talking to this business leader, and they have a couple metrics, and they tell you the success criteria of what a good outcome would look like. What is your advice on documenting this and making sure that the other person is sort of like, yeah, this is what we talked about, and like is in agreement? Because having a Zoom call, for example, or a chat near the water cooler, if you're actually in
Yeah.
person, um, you might have that conversation and you might have an interpretation of an understanding for what they're saying that might not be 100%, or they might not be the best communicator at relaying that info. So how do you actually document, and do you check this on a monthly, annually? I don't know, what's the process?
Yeah, that's a good point because that's something that everybody I think needs to work on more. Documenting
I've been
everything.
there, that's why I'm like, oh, but you
Yeah.
said that's what you wanted. They're
Yeah,
like,
so,
no.
so like one thing you really want to do is make sure, from a personal perspective, you want to make sure you cover yourself, right? Because if something, especially in my type of position where you are responsible for what it, like if the product doesn't ship, it's it's my fault. So
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter what they said or didn't say. But if they say something and it's not, I use Confluence for everything. So I write really comprehensive Confluence pages,
Okay.
and I usually meet with the product owner at least once a week and go over like any significant updates that we have. We do practice some form of agile. I
Hmm.
say some form because I don't think anybody practices it properly. But yeah, I would have it written in Confluence, really detailed, my interpretation of it, and very precise wording of what it means to be successful, what metrics we're going to measure, and then every week, just are we getting closer to meeting our objectives? Are we not? What's the problem? How can we get
Hmm.
help on this? But I'd say document it, speak regularly. I also like to have problem solving sessions once a week. So we don't, it's not a necessary meeting, but we block off time for that. So if there's anything that we need to talk about as a group, everybody has that time blocked off who works on the product.
That makes sense. So I wanted to shift over to self promotion because a lot of people struggle with that. They don't want to sound like they're full of themselves. They don't want to toot their own horn, but it is necessary, right? That little bit of self promo, let people know the projects you worked on, how you contributed to their success. So, what's your advice on effective self promo that is also, I guess, comfortable for people to do?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are nervous about self promotion because of like what you said. It sounds like you're being, uh, like it's almost like you're bragging a lot of the time. But what they don't see is there's a lot of people who just straight up lie about what they're doing. So you'll see resumes that are completely fabricated for the most part, or they were on a team that did this one thing and now they say that they know it. And when you have people doing this, it puts you at a disadvantage. So you should be confident in sharing what you've actually done. Like if you've actually done something or you actually know it, you should go out and say that you've done it. And it sounds strange at first, especially when you use platforms like LinkedIn. I post all the time, and it's very weird when you first do it, but you just once you do it a few times, you'll see like it's not that big of a deal. It feels a little bit unnatural
In the
because
beginning, it does
yeah, in the
because,
beginning it does.
and
But then you realize like if everybody else is kind of like completely stretching the truth, why not show confidence in what you actually know? And especially at work, some ways that I recommend to do this is to document accomplishments that you've done every week.
okay.
So, like weekly, I write down what did I do this week that's even worthwhile? Is there something that's significant, and what type of impact did it have? And then at the end of the quarter, I'll review those and like maybe pick whatever top ones. And then as I meet with my management and my leadership, I can bring some of those wins into our, like if we have a one-on-one, I can bring it up, or just any chat that I have with them, I can start to bring this up. And then at the year end, not only do I have a list of things that I've done, they're well aware of this all throughout the year. Because if
Hmm.
you come into your year-end review thinking, okay, I'm going to change their mind in this year-end review call, like the decision's already made before you join that call. They're just doing it out of
Yeah, it's too
formality.
late by then to show
Yeah,
them, hey,
so
look what I worked on.
yeah, so you need to constantly be showing that you're providing value. And again, it's just simply writing down what you've done. Like you've already done the work, now you just need to keep track of it and try to quantify it and then share it.
Yeah,
It's really
I
not
used to
that
do
hard to
that.
do, but it's hard to remember it. And like at the end of the like, you don't want to wait till the end of the year.
No,
Um,
you'll forget everything you worked on. I think having a Friday calendar reminder at like noon, Friday at noon, on your own calendar to ping you that says, "Hey, jot down your accomplishments for the week." I used to have a spreadsheet and I used this calendar reminder, and it was so much easier because you get to year end and we had to do a lot of self evals, and I'm like, what
mhm.
did I accomplish? Like, oh look, they're all listed out here, nice and neat, and just copy paste and throw them in. It was time saver for sure.
Yeah. Another thing I do at the end of the year is with those accomplishments, I'll make like this really pretty one-page report. It looks like a one-page like here's what I did in 2023, and it's like, it's this nice little diagram, and I send that out. So
What? So who do you send this to?
I send this to my management direct. Whoever has influence on my end of the year ratings, I'll send
They'll get a
them
copy of that.
that. They'll get a copy of that.
And have you ever shared something like this on LinkedIn or other platforms?
Um, I don't think I shared my template. No, maybe I should do that.
It'll be
Should
interesting to
share an
see.
example.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of platforms that you use, you mentioned LinkedIn, you mentioned sort of just jotting stuff down and sending it in an email to your management. Are there other platforms that you use for showcasing your portfolio, your successes, your accomplishments?
I keep mostly everything's on LinkedIn. I also do have a personal website though, and on that personal website, it's just adamdejans.com. But that on that website, I have my resume, of course. I have a little bit about me. I have different significant projects. What were the outcomes? Mostly to if somebody's interested in trying to find out information about me, especially if it's a recruiter, I want it to
Hmm.
be very. I want them to see like, okay, here's what I can do, here's what I've done, and make it very simple for them to find. So that's something I use. A lot of people have GitHubs, and I'll tell you
Hmm.
that nobody really cares what's on your GitHub. Like you have all this code on there, but nobody's looking at that. So I'm part of a lot of hiring teams here, and nobody's looking at your GitHub. If they do look at it, they're looking at the README to see, okay, is it well organized? What did they talk about? Like, are there pictures? Like, is it something that grabs my attention? Because a lot of
Hmm.
times you only have a few seconds to grab attention. And nobody's going to go look at your code and say, oh, well, they didn't implement it this way and stuff. Nobody cares. They're not going
I'm gonna
to.
write a post on LinkedIn maybe this week, and it's gonna say no one cares about what's on your GitHub by
That's true.
Adam DeJans Jr.
They don't care. And the hiring managers do not
Give me
care.
permission to post this. I just want to see
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
because a lot of times people do say promote your GitHub, but yeah, do hiring managers actually go in there and check your code?
Mm,
Like, I
they
don't
do.
know.
In my I've done a lot of interviews, and I've only had one person comment on actually the actual code in my GitHub. I've had other people go on and say, "Oh, I see you made this." Like basically, they read my README and saw the screenshots. But I've
Yeah,
only
I
had
think it's
one
more of like,
person.
did he do anything? Like, can
Yeah,
he do this stuff?
right.
It's not like a detailed look, right? It's just like you should have something there. It shouldn't be an empty
Yeah,
GitHub.
the goal is to get the interview. Once you're in the interview, you need to show what you need to know, what you know. So first, you need to get the interview.
And says ain't nobody got time for that. So
That's true. I mean, what you want to get the interview. Once you have the interview, you can talk technical all you want. But I
yeah,
don't. I see a lot of people like worrying about, oh, like this isn't the way they do it in industry exactly. Like I gotta fix this implementation. Nobody really cares. Like, does it look like a lot of the hiring managers are looking? Does he have any idea what he's talking about? Does it look good? Is it somebody who can help my team? And
yeah,
then after that, you get the interview, and then you can dive into the technical details.
yeah. It makes sense to me. So one of the final questions I had for you was: let's say you're in a role, you're enjoying yourself, you've got a team, or maybe you're part of a team. When do you know that the writing's on the wall and it's time for you to maybe look for a new role outside the company, within the company, or other?
I'd say first, if you're not enjoying it, that's a big sign. So if you're not enjoying your job, that's not a good place to be. If you're really stressed out about coming to work every day, that's a clear sign. Another sign that might not be so obvious and it gets people kind of trapped is they become the most senior person on the team, and there's nothing wrong with that. But after a while, you need to look around and see, is there still room for me to grow in my career if I stay in this position? If you're the most senior person in that role and you're not learning anything new from anybody, that's really not a good position to be either. So I think those are that's that, and a lot of people fall into a trap because they get really comfortable in the role.
Yes,
And I
because
think,
what you described are the first two aspects, the joy and the stress. So if you've got a joyful job and stress free, a lot of times that means you are too comfortable and you've become complacent and you might be not learning enough new things and you're not staying with the industry. But I agree, if you're the most senior and you're unhappy, you're stressed out, and all of that
I,
combined.
I would say it depends why you're stressed. Are you stressed because you're trying to solve some new problem and, like, you're thinking, there's a good stress and a bad stress, or do you just have anxiety because the senior lead just keeps
Your boss
rejecting your
sucks.
your they're rejecting your GitHub pull requests every day and, like, harassing you on there. Um,
Yes.
that's an extreme example, but it gets the point.
Yeah. Yeah. I think those are great signs to look for if you're in a job and you're just feeling stagnant, or if you're just not getting joy from it, you lost the interest. There's so many other opportunities, and a lot of your skills are transferable from one industry, from one company to another. Sometimes it's an excitement when you can take what you know and apply it somewhere else. I get not everyone is built that way. Some people actually truly, which shocks me, but they truly are happy doing almost the same thing every day for the same people.
Yeah.
Blows my mind. I could never. Like,
And you don't have to leave the company either. Like, you can look internally. I'd recommend looking internally first because usually there's an advantage to doing that.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
But
absolutely.
sometimes it's your time.
Yes. Sometimes somebody gives you a pink slip and says, "Bro, you gotta go." So that's a clear sign.
Yeah, that
Fire.
that's not mistakable. Yeah.
Yes, you won't miss that one. All right. Well, Adam, I want to thank you so much for being on the DATAcated Show. Final question is, where can people go to learn more, to follow you? I know you got a couple websites, so let's just refresh
Yeah, if
everyone's
you
memory.
if you look me up on LinkedIn, I think there's not many DeJans in the world, so you would find me. Also, bitbrosdata.com will be releasing new updates that we have about the book, the career guide, and different cohorts that we're going to be starting. So I think those are two good places to find out more.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much again for being a guest on the DATAcated Show. I learned a lot, like always, and great to actually meet you and get to chat with you.
Thank you for having me.